Good afternoon. My name is Catherine Coleman, and I am the Executive Director for the Ocean Protection Council, and I work for Secretary Laird, also as his Deputy Secretary for Ocean and Coastal Policy. I'd also like to introduce my colleague, Abe Doherty, who is specializing in climate change issues and works for the Ocean Protection Council within the Resources Agency. As Dr. Griggs outlined, the sea is rising, and in combination with large storm events, our coastal infrastructure and environment are facing profound changes. Additionally, the chemistry of the ocean is changing, both its temperature and its acidity, along with other parameters. And this group of issues give us some really serious policy issues that we are wrestling with now, and we need to, I think, accelerate our ability to move and get some answers to some of those policy issues in the near future. And some of those policy issues are, where do we invest and fight the sea, as Dr. Griggs was saying, and where do we decide to retreat? What restrictions should be put on new development or on redevelopment? What is the role of government in that? What is the role of the insurance world? How will we maintain public access to beaches, to wetlands? What happens to our beaches, marshes, and estuaries? How will our fishing communities and their infrastructure be affected by the shifts in migratory species as the water temperature changes? Are there any action beyond emission controls that will reduce the rising acidity in the ocean? And I could go on and on and on. It's quite a daunting task to try to pull together. And how do we pull these things together, these ideas together, and as a society mobilize? And that's, I think, what the Safeguarding California document is about. So in order to respond to the changes we face, we need the very best information we can get, as well as to try to be as nimble as we can in navigating the change in front of us. One of the most obvious questions is, how high will the sea rise? And to answer that question, the state and Oregon and Washington commissioned the National Research Council report that Dr. Griggs mentioned. The Coastal and Ocean Action Team, which is a consortium of 16 state agencies, used that information in the report to update the state's guidance on sea level rise, which is presented here, and it is, which do I press, Don? Knowing me, I'll pick the wrong one if possible. Thank you. This is directly out of the guidance document, and as was recapped by Dr. Griggs, it shows over time a large range of numbers. And I think that's probably one of the most difficult things that we have to deal with, is that there's a lot of uncertainty still. We're going to be getting more information as time goes on, more adaptation, we're getting more satellite imagery. And as we get more information, we will be adapting these numbers. However, that said, we need to make decisions today on, where do we manage, and those buildings that are falling down in Pacifica. When do you just say we got to let them go? When do you rebuild a seawall, or do you say let's let it go? Making those choices we have to make right now with the information we have, and this is the best information we have. We are certainly committed to updating that information as better information becomes available. Another key question is, where are the areas that are most vulnerable to sea level rise? The state and federal government teamed up to create high-resolution maps of the state's coastline and nearshore area, and that information will support modeling, mapping of sea level rise and its effect on communities. This information gives us much better specificity on how the ocean will approach the land and what will happen once it gets there. So these efforts that I've talked about so far have been statewide in nature, but we know that most of the challenges will need to be met at the local level. In safeguarding the state, we need to get right the way the state, federal, and local governments work together. A 2011 project surveyed coastal managers about climate change and identified key barriers that they felt that they had in responding. One of the biggest barriers, of course, is lack of funding. And we also know that there are probably no big, huge pots of money coming available right now anywhere, anytime soon. So we've done a number of things using the resources that we have to try to address these issues. One is the Ocean Protection Council is providing $2.5 million to fund sea level rise technical assessments and planning for local coastal programs. And that's done in partnership with the Coastal Conservancy and with the Coastal Commission. The State Coastal Conservancy is making available funding through their Climate Ready Grant Program. The Department of Water Resources Integrated Resource Water Management Program and the Strategic Growth Council's grants have incorporated sea level rise and sea level rise analyses into their grant program. So what we're trying to do is to take this guidance we got from the NRC report, we turned it into state guidance, and we're trying to make sure that that information is factored in a risk decision-making framework into the money that we are spending right now. So we hope that these various projects, along with there are so many projects going on at the local level, will provide us with some models of success. I want to just, there are hundreds of projects going on at the local level, and I just wanted to highlight a couple that I think are large in scale and really noteworthy. One is the South Bay Salt Pond Restoration Project, and that project is seeking to demonstrate how to use nature-based adaptation solutions to reduce the risk of flooding and provide habitat and other ecological benefits as well as protecting the human part of the environment. Another is Surfers Point Shoreline Managed Retreat Project, and that's an effort in the city of Ventura where they removed infrastructure near the coast and restored a natural beach, similar to some of the pictures that you were looking at. The project will provide more beachfront area for recreational use and function also then as a natural storm buffer. Another big effort is run out by BCDC and the NOAA Coastal Service Center, and that effort is called Adapting to Rising Tides. And it's a collaborative planning effort that has engaged local, regional, state, and federal agencies and organizations, as well as nonprofit and private organizations with the goal of increasing San Francisco Bay Area's preparedness and resilience. So there are these three really big projects, and they just kind of absolutely skim the surface of some of the incredibly thoughtful work that's going on in San Diego, LA, Ventura, and all the way up to the coast, Crescent City, and Humboldt. So a lot's going on, and part of it is how do we coordinate that effort? How do we learn from what is going on? How do we bring that back and knit it together? I want to change gears a little bit and move on to ocean chemistry. California and Oregon have partnered with Washington and British Columbia and both of our federal governments to create the West Coast Ocean Acidification and Hypoxia Science Panel. And this panel is going to provide state-level decision makers with the knowledge they need to evaluate and develop action plans for these really complex issues that are linked. The science panel will also identify the research and monitoring needed to contribute to a West Coast-wide assessment of ocean acidification and hypoxia and address information and data gaps critical for resource managers to make their decisions. I want to highlight that also that within California's network of marine protected areas, we are monitoring with an eye toward how these keystone ocean ecosystems respond to climate change. So in summary, there are a lot of pieces out there that are aimed, that people are, I think, in sort of taking those first steps forward of knowing that climate change, looking at everything we do through the lens of climate change. But we're really now poised, I think, to take that next step forward of really making some concrete steps. So whether it's from really enabling communities to do the vulnerability assessments that they need to get done to affect their local zoning, or how we bring together the national monitoring that's going on with ocean observing systems and bringing that back together in some kind of collective way. It's interesting to see, I mean, I've been in government for most of my career, and it's interesting to see that we're going to do all this, I think, without any big, huge new investment. So it really is a matter of how we take the money we have and repurpose it in a way that is smart, intelligent, and nimble as we move forward. And some of these projects can be done at the local level. Some can't be. Some are going to take the federal and the state government participation. And our challenge, I think, and as we develop this report, is our opportunity to take that next step forward and knit these ideas together. So I'm really looking forward to your ideas and questions. Thank you. questions for inquiring minds?
There's been, during both the previous presentations, there was a lot of discussion about accelerated costs for maintaining infrastructure on the coast. It seems that with the litany of expenses that are going to happen on the coast, that we might see what I guess I'd call, for lack of a better term, a reverse migration, where people might start moving inland because it all of a sudden it becomes more affordable when you start looking at sewage treatment plants having to change, water facilities having to change, roads, transportation. Is there any effort being made to assess, if that does occur, what we're going to need on the inland portion and what type of cost that might be, as well as the cost that it might be required for responding in terms of infrastructure to the changes on the coast?
You know, I don't hear people saying they want to move away from the coast. I've not heard that in my conversations. You know, talking to folks where I grew up down in Laguna Beach, and you know, a lot of folks in Newport, and asking them, you know, your houses, you know, they're about to go underwater, and they are absolutely sure they're going to find a way to, you know, one, beat the sea. They are going to fight the water. And then on the other hand, well, and if I have to sell that place, then I'm going to move, you know, someplace that's a little bit inland. But I'm not hearing people saying they want to move inland.
Yeah, we experienced that in the 90s, as we all know, as looking at the San Francisco Bay, the Bay Area, with a significant increase in the cost of living and housing. San Francisco, towns like Tracy, for example, that 10 years before that, we would have never considered it being a bedroom community that people would commute from. But because of the cost of living, with not this type of influence, people did migrate towards the Central Valley. Stockton, Modesto, et cetera, saw significant increases. And even here in Sacramento, at one point, it was estimated that 40 to 50% of the rush hour traffic going down the Highway 50 corridor was commuting to the Bay Area. So I sense that that's a possibility. It may not, how big a reality that comes, I don't know, but it could be a kind of like a second tier of expenses that are ancillary that may not be anticipated, but could in fact be the result, because it becomes not, for those who can afford to live on the coast, they're going to stay on the coast. A lot of people will no longer be able to afford if, like, their utility bills start tripling, quadrupling, because of infrastructure demand. So I'm just curious if that's part of the discussion that's going on amongst the climate action team or any of the other entities that are addressing this. And I know you may not be the one, Catherine, for that, but maybe somebody else is.
I'll jump in here for a quick second. I will say that the Strategic Growth Council is a cabinet-level organization that is looking at a number of growth-related issues. We know, quite aside from climate change, also that we're expecting population to go up in California, and the Strategic Growth Council is really looking at how to develop sustainable communities and looking at some of the exact issues that you were talking about, both through the climate lens and through other lenses like public health and things like that. And you'll see some of that reflected in our climate documents, the scoping plan, the AB 32 scoping plan, and also some of the other work coming out of the Strategic Growth Council.
Yeah. Adam Smith, Southern California Edison. Thanks for the presentation. I had a question regarding the coastal communities and vulnerability analysis. Have you seen a lot of uptake? Have you seen a lot of coastal communities kind of take on that kind of an analysis, or just generally wondering if you could comment on that? Because obviously as an electric utility, we have lots of substations and the rest around, and depending on what these coastal communities do, our infrastructure could be affected.
I think there's a big uptick. And if you give it Mike back to Abe, he can talk a little bit about the interest there's been in the $2.5 million we put out there with the Coastal Commission and the Conservancy through the Ocean Protection Council.
Sure. So just with the recent grant round that we had to give assistance to local governments to help them do sea level rise technical assessments and update their local coastal programs with the Coastal Commission, we got 18 applications from different governmental bodies. And some of them were associations of many different municipalities joining together. So, I mean, I feel like there are on the order of, more than 100 entities that are currently now moving forward with projects on different scales. But I think there's a large interest in really going, both doing the technical assessment and then moving into, okay, now how do we as a community respond to this? So I think there is a significant uptake in terms of people moving forward on this topic.
Dave Michelle, California Energy Commission. Actually, part of my question was just answered, but a second part to that is we keep asking local governments to do something in almost every case, whether it's a study or an assessment or even some kind of planning. I think it's important to also identify resources for them to do that work, not just ask them to do it.
Thank you very much.